Okay.
Davis, thank you very much for joining me.
Nice to see you, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. It's cool to have a look around and understand the business a bit better.
Good.
Yeah. Oompher is all about inspiring people to achieve extraordinary things. So who and what in your life has inspired you?
I think what's inspired me is my Christian faith. I grew up in a Christian family and always believed in God. And one of the things that it talks about in the Bible a lot is that you're here to make a contribution, and God gives you certain talents, and you need to use those talents. And so I've kind of always felt an obligation or a duty to do something with what talent I've got. Yeah. So that's probably my number one inspiration.
Yeah, fantastic. And did you always have, that interest in business as a youngster?
No. I ended up in business completely by accident. The incredibly poor careers advice at my school, which was the Latin teacher, as it often is, didn't really have any idea what to do with me. And everybody in my school either did engineering or medicine, or science type jobs, and I didn't really have the skills to do those. So the only thing that was left at my academic level was law, and then I figured out that there were too many law students in the country and not enough law jobs, so I did business to kind of make myself more marketable. And as I started studying business at university, I thought, far out, this is much more interesting and so on than law. So
yeah, cool. So
I chose to get into business, never practice law.
Yeah, awesome. And back in 1979, when you joined Toyota, quite a few years ago now, I mean, what attracted you to this company in the first place?
Because I had 2 degrees, I was very marketable, and so I had a lot of job offers from lots of very cool companies, and I turned them all down, and I came to Toyota because I felt I could make a contribution to Toyota. Whereas all the glamour companies that I looked at, they were all about they'd make a contribution to me. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to actually make a contribution myself. Going back to the parable of the talents.
Yep.
And so I chose this job at Toyota, which wasn't even called Toyota in those days. It was called Consolidated Motor Distributors. Toyota was virtually unknown.
Oh, wow.
And that was and I think the job offer was 30% less pay than any of the others.
Yeah.
So I chose the lowest paid,
Wow.
least profile job.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Because I could contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. And having stayed here, I mean, all those years, what's kept you here? Is it that feeling that you have had more to contribute, or have you really enjoyed the people?
I've enjoyed the people. I've enjoyed the opportunity to contribute. Toyota's done incredibly well over the 35 years that I've been in the company.
Yeah.
And I guess I've never felt that God's called me to anything else. I still feel I'm making a contribution where I am.
Yeah. So I guess since 1979, I mean, the types of roles you've been involved with, I mean, it's been pretty diverse over time, such as general manager, planning, sales and marketing, and customer services. Toyota Motor Sales in Los Angeles, chief operating officer, and obviously CEO today. So what are some of the key lessons you've learned across these roles, which has shaped the CEO that you are today?
I think it's the variety, actually. As you say, I've done lots of different jobs. Other than engineering or manufacturing, I've done almost every job in a distributor organisation, and that's given me an appreciation for all the various things that people do and how each job or each role in an organisation adds value to the total. And if you're not adding value or making a contribution, kind of what are you doing? So I've sort of learned, this is how you can add value in the various jobs, and if you aggregate them all together, that got me into the role of being a CEO.
Yeah, cool. And tell us a bit more about your time in the USA. I mean, was it different business over there as opposed to here in New Zealand?
Vastly different. I mean, some of the core principles are the same. You're there to satisfy customers, and you're doing it with cars and with service and so on, but it's the scale is 100 times bigger, the budgets are 100 times bigger, the bureaucracy's 100 times bigger. It was great. Probably the single biggest lesson I got was that there's different styles of doing things. Okay. In New Zealand, because we're quite small, you tend to kind of gravitate around the style of the CEO or a small senior group. Yeah. Whereas in a much bigger organisation, and I moved around a bit, I was able to see, there's this way of doing things. Wow, you can do it this way. Yeah. And so you kind of learn different perspectives. getting some international experience, kind of a critical thing for any young person wanting to build a career.
Okay.
Because it opens your eyes to
Yeah.
possibilities.
So get overseas and check out different markets.
Yeah.
And
And just different ways of doing stuff.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So, I guess in summary, what would your advice be for a young person wanting to get into corporate business or business in general? What would you pass on from your experience?
I think there's a role to, in terms of education,
Yeah.
try and do some business education, but I wouldn't limit it to business education. I'd be always thinking, can I pick up papers along the way that might broaden my skills? So you might have a skill and might have around maybe science or maybe the arts or something as well as business education. I think it's important to have a passion for whatever you do. So I'm passionate about business rather than cars, but probably 50% of the people who work in Toyota are passionate about cars rather than business.
Okay.
But if you've got passion, you kind of want to do stuff,
Yeah.
and so you've got to drive. If you've got no drive, it's like you're not going to really make it in business, because business is a competitive sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to talk a bit about leadership now, and I guess in particular business leadership and environmental leadership in business. I mean, just a question to kick this off. I mean, in 100 years, do you think everyone will be driving around in plug-in electric cars?
Probably not.
Okay.
I think plug-in electric cars will probably be a very key solution around the world, but there's probably going to be hydrogen fuel cell cars, and it's going to vary depending on what the use of the car is, what country they're in. New Zealand has got an incredible advantage in electricity because we're so much into renewable electricity. We're probably the most advanced country in the world in that space.
Yeah.
So I'd be sad if in 100 years we're not in New Zealand driving plug-in electrics, but I don't think that's going to be the common pattern all around the world.
Okay, and what's companies like Toyota doing to prepare for this change that's coming?
Well, we recognised it back in the 70s, so this is not a new thing. When the oil crisis hit, and we realised, we're relying on oil, and so we started investing in hybrids. And hybrids, because of the way it merges two different engine technologies together, and it uses regenerative braking and all that sort of stuff, we thought that's kind of a stepping stone to lots of different options, because we couldn't see there was any silver bullet around the world. And hybrids gives you the option to go in multiple different directions. So we started pouring money into hybrids in the 70s. We got it on the market in the 90s, and now we're up to something like 7 million hybrids we've sold around the world. And we're easily the world leader in this space. Now what we're starting to do, and we've done some electric cars in the 90s and right up until recently. We're now experimenting in the hydrogen fuel cell space. We're probably the leader in that space as well. But probably the next kind of major growth area will be plug-in hybrids.
Right.
So you plug in your car to the wall at night, you run your first 50k or 100k on electricity, and then your petrol engine cuts in if you need it.
Yeah.
But most people do only short journeys. So if you only do 30k to work and back, your petrol engine may never turn on until you decide to go to Taupo for the weekend.
Okay. Yeah. And then, I drove one of those for a few weeks earlier in last year, and it's amazing because driving around the city, you're on electricity for the first 100k or so, and then it kicks in, and then I think we drove it for like a week, and I think I put $20 worth of fuel in it.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I guess with all this electricity and electric car change, it seems to be sort of a hot topic at the moment around the world with companies like Tesla and stuff. Is that something that I guess big traditional companies like Toyota that do really, really well and do dominate the sector are a bit worried that companies like Elon Musk and Tesla are going to come in and sort of change things really fast?
I think the business textbook would tell you that yes, all the disruption will come from small companies, but the car business is a very big business, and it's quite hard to disrupt people. And Toyota was a disruptive technology when it came in the 1930s with the way we build cars, but Ford and General Motors have been around since the year dot in the car business. They are still really big car companies. It takes a long time to knock the big guys out. And in that long time, the big guys figure out how to adopt innovation themselves. So people like Tesla are great at kind of creating small ideas and growing them, but it often is the big guys who then take on the idea and build it from there on.
Yeah, okay. And with Toyota having been the first national dealership in the country to having implemented the Enviromark, I mean, what is your advice for business leaders today and people wanting to get into business about this environmental leadership? Is it something that's increasing and changing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the world is heading towards a big crunch, if you like, where we are a growth-obsessed globe on a finite planet. So eventually there is some kind of a crunch coming. And we're starting to see it with the whole issue of climate change. So all businesses need to think about that, whether you're in the car business who produce use carbon and burn fossil fuels and stuff, or whether you're in the insurance business because that's going to be affected by climate change, or any business has got to think about it. So how soon it hits your business, it'll just depend on the business, but yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, okay. So for people wanting to get into business, I mean, could environmental science and so on be good things to study?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. And as a leader, how does Toyota's vision and values reflect in your behaviour as a leader?
Toyota's vision and values is basically about balancing two things. We have what we call the Toyota way, which is continuous improvement and respect for people. And they speak to kind of the hard parts of the business. You've got to make profits, got to sell cars, whatever. And the soft side of a business, which is the people, because you can't do anything without the people. So you're always trying to balance those two things. And so our values are all about trying to make sure that we keep a focus on the results and keep improving them, continuous improvement, but at the same time looking out for our customers, looking out for our staff and so on, because if you ignore those things, the business will fall over anyway.
Yeah, okay. And just talking about those people and looking after those staff, I mean, what does Toyota do to nurture young talent and help develop people?
We try and do it in a number of ways. We try and, firstly, we have a mentality of horizontal nurturing. So we tend to bring people into the business and try and move them through a variety of different jobs and different departments to see where they're good at. Okay. So over my career, I've worked almost everywhere. Mm-hmm. That's their kind of mentality, to see how good they are. Yeah. And eventually people will settle in a place which they like. So I settled in management generally, but I could have settled in sales or something like that. So we have a mentality of moving people around, and so you're nurturing their kind of involvement in the business and their building expertise, and you're training them as they go in lots of different disciplines. Then we've also got a mentality of vertical nurturing. So it's about as they move up the organisation or the specialty, we pour a lot of training into them for wherever they're up to. So if they're going on a management track, they might get management training, but if they're like a specialist, an IT person, they might get a huge amount of IT training as they become more and more specialised in IT. And then what we've recently started doing is a lot more work around recruiting graduate talent into the organisation with a view of placing people in dealerships around the country. Okay. Because dealerships find it quite hard to attract graduate talent. People don't sort of think of, I've just got a degree, I'll go and work in a dealership. So we recruit them into TNZ, we give them a 3-year kind of almost apprenticeship or cadetship, where they do a lot of different jobs in dealerships, TNZ, Toyota Finance, before they go into a dealership 3 years after they've graduated. So there's lots of different strategies.
Okay, and from your experience, have you found, I guess, great leaders are born, or do they more develop from experience?
I think it's a mixture. I think some people are innately good at leading people, and you can see it when they're 3 years old or 5 years old in the playground. I have a daughter who led a class rebellion when she was 5 because she didn't know she wasn't allowed to. I am sure she will end up being a CEO. Other people are just naturally followers, but you also learn a lot. So one of the pieces of advice I would give, if somebody wants to get into leadership or wants to become a CEO or management, is start as soon as you can. If you're 15 years of age, get into a sports team and try and end up captain, or get into a church youth group and get involved, do something, and start learning about leadership. I'm a great believer in the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours theory, which is in a book called The Outliers, which is that you don't get good at something until you've done 10,000 hours of hard work at it. That's 5 years' work. So if you want to be a leader, be a youth group leader, for example, for 10 years. Then you'll get good at leadership, because leading teenagers is really hard.
And on that point, I mean, what's one sort of behavioural trait that you reckon all young leaders should aim to demonstrate?
I think all leaders need to demonstrate integrity. The concept of having one particular trait, I think, is a bit naive, because lots of leaders, there's a huge diversity of kind of the behaviours and what's required.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a command and control kind of approach, depending on the circumstances, depending on the culture of the place you're in. Sometimes it's all about enabling people. So really the biggest thing you need, because people will eventually see through you as a leader, is integrity.
Right.
You've got to walk the talk, not stumble the mumble.
Yeah, okay, cool. I like that, that's good. When you're looking to employ within Toyota yourself, I mean, what are some of the other key things that you look for in good people?
As I said earlier in this discussion, part of it's about passion. If they've got a passion, because if they haven't got a passion, they're not really going to work on stuff.
Yeah.
And succeeding in business or succeeding in anything is about hard work. You don't get to the top in anything unless you do a lot of hard work. So you may as well be passionate about it. Obviously people have to have the requisite basic skills, either whether it's numeric or verbal skills or whatever.
Yep.
And after that, it's pretty much anything. I mean, if they've got the right attitude, you can train almost anything else in. If you, a pithy epithet is you hire for attitude, train for skills.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. And in 2013, I mean, it was announced that Toyota has the strongest corporate reputation in the country, and staff turnover as well is incredibly low at about 10% per annum. I mean, people obviously like it here, who work here, and the country respects this brand. So what do you think it is that this brand does differently than other corporates in New Zealand that makes these people who work here love it so much?
I think cars are fundamentally quite an interesting thing. People like the product.
Okay.
So a lot of the staff have a passion for cars.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of the reason we have done well in terms of our reputation and in terms of staff retention is because of the Toyota way. We balance really well between continuous improvement, which results in business success, but also we have a big respect for people, and so we look after our staff really well. We do the right thing by customers, we do the right thing by society, we're focused on sustainability. And so people say, I'm proud to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I'm proud to drive a Toyota. And kind of, it resonates with people. They think, that I'm okay with that. We don't have any inconsistencies in our behaviour.
Yeah. So when you say look after staff, what would some examples be of ways you go about that?
Well, we tend to we give people healthcare as part of their package because that's a huge issue for people. We have good pension plans. We have excellent working conditions. We have very kind of open door policies that people can talk to the boss, as it were. I spend a chunk of my life just going around talking to everybody, not just in Toyota New Zealand, but in every dealership. I go and visit everybody in every dealership every year,
right?
Which takes me best part of 3 months of my life every year.
Yeah.
But that's part of my job.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is kind of repetitive in the sense that I'll be saying the same messages, but I'm seen to be out there talking to people about the same thing. So everybody's kind of on the same page, and they can see what I stand for. They can see the personal values of me and Toyota, and everything's kind of aligned. Yeah,
okay, fantastic. And just before we head into our quick fire questions to finish off, we're doing a bit of work with Seeka around the concept of change and people changing jobs if they're not enjoying what they're doing. So, I mean, do you see lots of opportunity in New Zealand for people to change if they're not happy?
I think it's quite an awkward question. There is always jobs out there. You can always get another job or a higher salary. The fact that Toyota pays you $50,000, therefore somebody else will pay you $55,000 because they're taking Toyota as a benchmark. I think sometimes that's quite unhelpful to have a mentality that you can always search around and get another job, because you're kind of just job hopping from thing to thing. My personal approach has always been, I'll think about it once a year and say, am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I getting out of the company what I would hope in terms of development and pay or whatever? And am I having the opportunity to put in what I would like to do in terms of adding value or making a contribution? If I'm happy, I stop looking.
Okay.
So, because if you're always looking, you're always dissatisfied, you're always kind of unsettled.
Yeah, right.
Whereas if you really want to succeed, you're going to have to build over time. And so
have a sort of structured approach to looking for new stuff. And if you were looking to change, I mean, they would be the main drivers for your change, is contribution?
Contribution, yeah. Can I add value?
Okay. So for people looking at changing jobs, I mean, one of the things we've come across with people we've talked to is they say, oh, I'm not very happy, but they don't really know where to start. I mean, what's your advice for people who just want to know where to start and to start looking for jobs?
That's a hard question. In terms of looking for a job, I don't know, because I never look for a job really, because I'm always kind of happy.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to articulate really what you want out of life. Is it money? Is it to extend your creativity? Is it to work with people? You need to decide what is it that actually turns you on, and what kind of a job is going to fulfill those needs.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I've just got a few quick fire questions to finish off now. In summary, I mean, what does it take to be a CEO?
It's a bit of luck. Getting to the top in business is a competition, and if you're in the right place at the right time, you win, and if you're not, you lose. So a bit of it is luck. You've got to have the raw skills of, you've got to be numerate, you've got to be articulate, you've got to be able to wear hats, you've got to be able to actually inspire people to follow you, because otherwise you're not going to be a leader if you've got no followers. I think there's a lot of commitment in it. You have to actually be prepared to put in the work.
Yeah. Okay. And what would be your summary sort of 3 bits of advice for people who want to become business leaders?
Start young.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Youth group, sports leader, whatever. Be passionate about what you're doing, either the business or the topic of the subject matter of the business. And be yourself. You've got to be honest.
Okay.
Integrity.
Right. And over your time in business, what are some of the key changes you've identified in the way that maybe this country goes about business?
Oh, deregulation.
Right.
By far.
Okay.
When I started work in the 70s, we were one of the most regulated capitalist economies on earth.
Yep.
We had price controls, wage controls, government ran everything. We had import licensing, tariffs, you name it. Today we have virtually none of that. We're now a fantastic, open, flexible economy, one of the most advanced in the world in that space. And the fact that we achieved that without social unrest of any great significance is just amazing.
Yeah.
So deregulation with it has brought a workforce that is far more flexible and enabled than it used to be. We used to live in much more of a command and control mentality in a lot of our businesses. It was very rigid and bureaucratic. Now we're much more flexible. So those are the big changes I've seen.
And what about the future? I mean, what do you think will be some of the big changes over the next 5, 10 or 20 years?
I think sustainability is going to be a huge thing because of this environmental crunch that's coming.
Yeah.
I think we as a nation and as a planet are going to have to wrestle with the issues of whether continuous growth is essential, or whether there's a new definition of what growth stands for. What are we pursuing? Is GDP growth the be-all and end-all, or is something else? Is there more to life than just that? And I think we are going to have to wrestle with the whole issue of IT. The whole things like robots and artificial intelligence, the internet. We are scratching the surface, just scratching the surface. I heard today that Foxconn are just going to go up to 10 million robots in their factory in China. When Foxconn is the company that makes iPads and iPhones and stuff. They already have 3 million. 3 million robots already, and they're going to go to 10 million.
Yeah.
I mean, the future of work is going to be radically different. And
What should people do to prepare for that, do you think?
get their head around the fact that they need to be lifelong learners, that you are never going to be finished learning, because the jobs it sounds trite, but the job you're going to do in 5 years probably doesn't exist today.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And just before we finish off, I mean, what would the 16-year-old boy you were think of who you've become today?
I think he would be, this might sound a bit arrogant, but he'd say, oh yeah, no big deal, because I remember being forced as a 16 or 17-year-old to write an obituary for myself as a career exercise.
Wow.
And I found that obituary recently, and right number of kids. Didn't specify the job, but exactly what I've done. loyal to one company and get to CEO, stayed in New Zealand basically for my career. All those things have come to pass. At the same time, I think he would be, the 16-year-old would be saying, quite surprising how much stuff changed along the way, which is the whole point of deregulation, moving to an open market. But so it's kind of, it's okay.
So, yeah, brilliant, and thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome to have a chat. So to finish off, Alistair, can you look down this camera here and tell us, what is your wise words for the people of New Zealand?
My wise words for the people of New Zealand is think about a proverb or saying that I first heard from a guy, Mackenzie, who owned a retail store and then started a charitable foundation. And that is that you make a living out of what you get, but you make a life out of what you give.
Awesome. Alistair Davis, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So, just tell us a little bit about your role and what you do and how long you've been here and so on.
Okay, I'm Gracie and I've been working here for 11 years and I've been doing accounts for the last couple of years.
Awesome. And tell us a bit more about the accounts. So what's your sort of day-to-day role and how does that work?
Okay, I've been doing both accounts payable and receivable.
Just tell us a little bit about why you like Toyota and why you would recommend people to work here.
Okay, well, I've been driving a Toyota for a few years now and I do know that it is a very reliable vehicle and I do recommend it to other customers as well.
To kick this off, we'll start with you, Elliot. Just tell us a bit about your role and what you do and when you started and so on.
Okay, so I'm in new car sales. I didn't do this originally. I was an auto electrician for 6 years, but I decided I wanted something a little bit more social, a little bit more interaction with people. So I thought this would be a pretty good way to, have a job where I could actually enjoy talking to people for a living and, helping them out with sort of solving problems that are positive rather than service side. Which was,
cool. And what's your favourite thing about working at Toyota?
I love the brand. So my family's been a Toyota family my whole life. My dad actually ran this dealership years and years and years ago. So I've had a long established relationship knowing the brand and working on them in the service side, so I know the product. So I've got a lot of confidence.
Yeah. If someone thinking about working here, what would you say to them about this place?
Oh, I think it's a very positive place. Everyone's very supportive. If you've got something that you want to, an issue that you want to raise or something that you think could be improved, everyone's very willing to take that knowledge on board and try it. So it's been a bit of a change actually coming from a trade environment to come to a place like this. It's been quite refreshing.
What about you, Anna? What's your role?
I'm direct assistant.
Cool.
And I've been here, I started off in 1996 as a vehicle controller, and then I went upstairs to admin, and then went downstairs to service, Lexus, and then I went to Sydney for about 3 years and then came back and now have been doing this job for about 6 years now, I think.
Wow, so you've had lots of good opportunities across the company. And
Yes. So from admin to service advisor to now being direct assistant and all that,
Yeah, and what's been your favourite part of the business to work in?
Directs actually.
Okay.
It's we get to go out and deliver the cars to our clients and customers. So yeah, it's nice to go for a drive on a sunny day.
Yep, cool.
Yeah.
And is Toyota a good employer?
Yeah. Yes. And I've enjoyed. I've been here for, without the 3 years gap, would have been here for about 15, 16 years.
Wow, yeah. If you've been here for that long, you must love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.